Tony, shifting gears, one of the things that I spotted on Flight Tracker this week, and I think several of the people here in the Carolinas have, were alongside all of the little cute icons for airplanes, these circular balloon icons for the Loon Balloon project. Tell us about it. I understand you're familiar with it, and I think it caught a lot of us flight trackers off guard maybe a little bit, but also people screaming UFOs in the sky as these things were passing overhead.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, wasn't there? Yeah, it's something that I got to learn a little bit about the other night. So in addition to talking with you fine folks, I've got about 350 meteorologists around the country that I'm in contact with on a regular basis. I try to give them information about the what's visible in the sky, usually planets, usually comets, meteor showers, things like that. But I am perfectly happy to get a "what's this thing in the sky" question when it's something in our atmosphere. And that's what happened. I forget what day was it. Was it Tuesday night?
Yeah, that sounds maybe Monday. I mean, depending on where you were, right? These things went right over Greensboro, down towards Fayetteville, then out towards Charleston. So it was kind of a small day.
I first got looking at these things. It was Tim Buckley at WFMY in Greensboro. I get a text from him and it says, "There's this white dot in the sky. What do you know about it?" What? And I looked at it and immediately thought it was a balloon. An unmoving white dot in the sky, especially that high up, is going to tend to be a balloon. It's so high up it doesn't appear to be moving at all. And these balloons are operating with between 50,000 and 60,000 feet. So as you mentioned, as part of Project Loon, we came to understand, which is a project that is, I want to make sure I get the relationship correct here. Google and Loon are subsidiaries of the same parent company, which is called Alphabet.
Okay.
It's all business spin-off nonsense, but anyway, they're looking to provide, as I understand it, internet connectivity in areas that don't get it, which I think is great. I think they're pushing to have like 1 megabit capability. There's an antenna that you have to have outside, and it's going to be a network of balloons, not unlike SpaceX's Starlink project, that talk to each other and serve as an uplink downlink network. But as I understand it, they're in a testing phase. I think their launch site is up in northern Arizona somewhere. I'm sorry, northern Nevada. And these particular balloons that floated over the Carolinas, there was 4 that were visible here around the Triangle area, and up in the Triad around Greensboro, they were visible there as well. If you think about 50,000 feet, and you think about that circle that you draw around something like that, it's visible for a good amount of space. So we dug into it. It's funny that you saw it on flight radar first, because everybody else saw it in the sky first. We go outside from time to time.
We didn't get the direct overhead pass here in Charlotte.
Yeah, you did have one float a little bit near you. There was one that went on out over Asheville, out over Cherokee, and ended up in Alabama the last time I saw it. But the ones that we saw around Greensboro, as I understand them, they floated out directly south off the coast of Charleston and ultimately Jacksonville. But I went and looked just out of curiosity. Once I found out that they were trackable through flight radar, wrote a little script that went up to use one of the APIs of one of those radar tracking sites, or those flight tracking sites. I found 32 of them around the world.
Wow.
I found actually 33 over Australia, the Congo, Kenya, Zambia, Peru. I'm looking at my list here right now. There's a bunch out east of Madagascar, and one off Peru, and then we had the couple here that had floated down from Canada, down across Ohio, West Virginia, and into the Carolinas.
They could be pretty scary if you don't know what they are. I had one other question, and then it sounds like Shay has one too. I'm curious, Tony, in your reading, besides the application of using them to provide internet to rural places that maybe aren't tethered on the ground, have you seen any discussion of an application to use them in storm response when a network might be wiped out due to a natural disaster?
I believe they actually used them for that purpose after, I want to say it was in 2017, but with that pair of storms that went over Puerto Rico. They did some releases from Puerto Rico, If you go on one of the flight tracking websites, I think it might have been Flight Radar 24. Don't quote me on that, but there's a blog post on there about them tracking many of these things during some of those storm responses, and providing that kind of connectivity to folks that they may not have power, but they probably have a way to charge phones. To figure out how to do that, it takes a little while to get that infrastructure back up for cellular service. So being able to do that with a balloon is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Tony. I know that some of our Mets with WeatherFlow, we met and talked about it several years ago when Google was partnering with them. Now they're partnered with HAPS Mobile, and they provide LTE connectivity to these countries, these third world countries, or other countries that lose connectivity during natural disasters. Peru, 2019 was a prime example of where Project Loon was utilized to get LTE connectivity for authorities to get their internet settings back up, and for folks to get some LTE receptions on their phones and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting. I didn't know that there were that many balloons, but I know that they started this off back in 2013, where they did their first test flight around the world. So things have kind of progressed over time. Do you see this as being a permanent solution?
I don't know. Not my area of expertise, but I think it's great that we're able to provide that kind of functionality there. One concern I've got, though, is that these things are helium-based. And helium is something that is in short supply right now. I mean, if you were to go to one of the party stores and try to get helium balloons, you probably couldn't do it. Helium is a very important gas in the space industry. It's used for cleanly purging cylinders and spheres and things like that. So we need it for lots of different things. I hope they can find another lifting gas other than helium, because it is a neat and useful project. But I hope they don't use up too much helium doing it. One other thought on it too is, while we're up there hanging around for days and days at a time at 50, 60,000 feet, sure would be nice to get some weather instruments up there too, some atmospheric instruments, and be able to send some of that data down from that close to the stratosphere.
Sure, I know Boeing's doing that with the unmanned craft that flies for weeks and months at a time on solar energy. And I think when I read on Loon's website that they have their partnership with HAPS Mobile, they have test flight. They've done all their they've rolled out their new unmanned craft that goes out. So that may be the solution to what they're looking for. Instead of having balloons anymore, they're going to have unmanned planes going up that just circle around.
We've lost a lot of data from the grounding of commercial airliners too during the COVID situation. It's amazing how much data we were getting from those. That's closer to 30,000 feet, but it really filled in a lot of those gaps the radio sondes were providing.
In the past, we've talked about the radio sondes that you just mentioned. Could you maybe compare and contrast these Loon balloons with a typical weather balloon, because they have very different lifetimes, obviously, and different purposes?
Different lifetimes, quite a bit larger, and if you find the images of the Loon launch site, I was looking at that the other day. They got some permanent structures out there, and they're building some larger ones as well, just to be able to handle launching these things, because they are so significantly large. And they do get much bigger as they go up into the atmosphere and the air pressure goes down. So most folks that I saw report them or share pictures of them describe them as looking like big jellyfish. It's a kind of a silvery looking material, very, very large. It's not as spherical as a weather balloon looks. Those are, you guys are the experts here. I think they're made of some sort of a latex material, but it's very opaque. Where these are almost like translucent appearance. They're much, much larger, and the volume of lifting gases that they put in there is very, very different too.
So the balloons don't explode at 70,000, or they aren't even meant necessarily to go up to 100,000 feet like a typical weather balloon.
They aren't. They hang out between 50,000 to 60,000 feet. I think a lot of what the research is doing right now is to understand how the steering winds up there work, how viable this is to provide, how wide a coverage that they can provide, um, how the jet stream changes in the jet stream and other things like that are going to affect their coverage. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. And as you mentioned, we can go on these flight tracking websites and look at them. If you go in and you enter HBAL and a 3-digit number, you might just find one.